So we have now explored some topics today already. I like that someone said to me, we have topics for 2 days of conference. There's so many interesting things we learn today, we hear about today, and we'll add a new topic to the list, and that's search engines. And I personally don't know the engine you will talk about, so I'm very happy to hear everything you have to say. So give it up for Stephan.
I would have been very surprised if you know the engine because it's relatively new, so we'll see what that means. Yeah, so in the next 45-ish minutes, I like to talk to you about search engines, and a pretty cool tool called Galley that you can pretty easily hook in your application and make search available to your application without actually not worrying too much about search and how it internally works, just like kind of plug and play-ish. Search is a pretty big, important topic these days, I guess. Back early last year, Nosto conducted a survey among their customers, and 69% said that the first thing they do when they enter a website is jump directly to the search bar. Some say that's a pretty damn high number, but I would say it's kind of realistic. I mean, at least judging myself, whenever I'm working in an application or when I'm browsing the web, the first thing that I do is go straight to the search bar. Who of you thinks the same or works the same? Yeah, okay, kind of like 69%, good. Just double check. And that's not bad, obviously, right? Because we have so much data to deal with, and search is sadly the best way currently to navigate around. What's bad is this. Only 35% of all consumers say that most websites have a very good search experience. And that means 2/3 of all applications out there have search that sucks. And that means, Holger, if you have search on a website, it sucks. But no worries, I've good, exactly, 1, 2, 3. Perfect. But I've good news for you. If you stay to the end, I'll show you some awesome, cool solution that you can very easily install, and then your customers will be very happy. Well, what happens if you arrive at a website, you search, and the search doesn't return what you're looking for? Well, you leave. About 80% of all shoppers instantly leave when they can't find what they are looking for. And again, that's totally a number that I can relate. If I can't find what I'm looking for in my email client, I'll just throw my computer out the window. Or if I go to an e-commerce site and I'm specifically looking for a product that I can't find, in a split second I'm gone, right? So these days, search is really important, and you need to make sure that it works and shows relevant search results. And that's only one part of the problem. Like if your customer is gone, then it's gone. The thing is, if the customer would have found the product on your website, 43% actually would have paid more just to be able to purchase the product on your site. So you not only lost the customer, you also lost the sales, and that's really bad. That sucks. Thing is, some 30, 40 years, or what, that reveals my age. In the last century, this was like top-notch search, right? For some use cases, it still is today, but obviously not if you try to find something on Amazon with, I think in Germany they have like 24 million products. I'm quite sure they don't use a like expression. But anyone from Amazon here that can prove me wrong? Okay, good. So that's not what we're going to talk about today, although in certain situations that still might work. Hi, I'm Stephan. I trained the whole morning for this joke. Thank you. I think the cool kids today would call me a content creator. I blog a lot. Well, I don't do TikToks and stuff, but I blog a lot. I speak at meetups and conferences, and when I'm not speaking at meetups, I organize meetups. I'm organizing the PHP meetup in Frankfurt. I'm organizing the PHP meetup Metropolregion Rhein-Neckar. For all you English-speaking people in the audience, yes, that is a German name. That is not made up. And if I'm not attending and speaking at conferences, I organize my own conference called UNConf, which will happen in 2 weeks. I would have loved to invite you all to attend the event, but sadly we are sold out. So you miss a great 10-year anniversary, but keep out an eye for next year. I hear there might be something that we have in the books. Enough from me. Let's get back on track and talk about Galley. I said in the introduction, Galley is a new contender, technically. So they released their 1.0 version last summer. Earlier this year, they released the 1.3 version. So you might think this is a very new thing. And as I said, technically it is, but it actually isn't. Because the roots go way longer in the past than you might think. It all started 2013 as a research and development project at Smile. Smile is a large IT consultancy company in France and some other countries, more than 2,000 people. And back in 2013, they were challenged with figuring out if it's possible to plug in Elasticsearch into a Magento 1 instance. So they did this. Why are you laughing? That's totally legit. So they accomplished the task, and they were very happy with the results, and installed that for a bunch of their customers, and then a few years later decided to turn this thing into an open source product, and that has been known until then as Elasticsearch Open Source. Now, we heard it this morning from Juliette. Open source development costs money, right? Developers don't do it, well, okay, some do it for free, but we should pay them, obviously. And that's also what the Smile folks figured out, like, we need some way to finance that, and their solution was to create a premium version. More features, and you need to pay for it to get access to. So cool, that's what they did. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Magento and the Magento space. I think in 2019, Adobe bought Magento, and since that, things didn't look that good for Magento, let's put it that way. So the Smile people figured out, why should we give up, maybe if Magento like completely disappears, what we have built in the last 10 years and not do anything with it? It wouldn't be cooler to create maybe like a microservice for search that can be plugged in any kind of e-commerce system or basically also any kind of application. So Galley is very much focused on e-commerce, but you can totally do whatever you want with it. And that led to the 1.0 release last year. Now, let's talk tech. What are the building blocks of Galley? Well, first of all, it's a PHP application. Otherwise, I would not be here talking about it. It's built on Symfony. Who of you know Symfony? Okay. Who of you is using Symfony? Okay. Kind of. Technically, it's built on API platform. Who of you knows what API platform? Oh, yes. Okay, cool. Who is using API platform? Okay. Who likes API platform? Okay. Even fewer hands. Okay, I should stop asking questions. Now, for those of you who don't know, API platform, as the name implies, is a framework built on top of Symfony that makes it very easy for you to build and publish and expose APIs without knowing not too much about how you would properly build APIs with dozens of standards around and what you can do with it. And funny coincidence, yesterday and today there is the API Platform Conference happening in Lille. So if you feel you want to know what's going on, wait a few more weeks or maybe months, and then hop on YouTube to find all the recordings up there. So if you just want to have a sneak peek of what that's doing. But there's more. We do need a relational database. Can be MariaDB, can be Postgres, doesn't really matter. And we need a search engine. Elastic, OpenSearch, doesn't really matter. Just pick what makes the most sense for you. And all of that makes for the buzzword MACH. Who of you knows what MACH means? No, okay. Okay, one, perfect. Yeah, we had to talk about it, right? So the MACH Alliance is a kind of consortium of a lot of companies providing microservice-based, that's the M, API first, that's the A, C means cloud native, and H means headless solutions. So basically, services up and running in the cloud that you can relatively easy consume in your front end. Composable front end is another term in that space, to build your applications and make it really easy to do some awesome magic stuff with it. Now, the C part, cloud native, is a bit discussable for Galley because it's not really a software as a service solution. You need to host and install it yourselves. But it's like standard PHP. It's using Postgres, using Elastic. It's using Varnish under the hood, Redis, and all that stuff. So it should be fairly easy to deploy to whatever cloud you want, or maybe also on-premise. What are the key features? Well, I guess on the very left, this is self-explanatory, full text search, right? I want to search what I added. I can configure everything based on the different attributes of my entities that I put in. Configure the field weight, if it should use fuzzy search algorithms or not. It does support multiple languages. It supports synonyms and expansions. I'll cover that in a second. You can do boosts, like making sure that certain products raise in the search results based on certain rules. They have a ton of logic regarding layered navigation, like how filters are aggregated and then rendered in the front end. There's a lot of stuff you can do and configure per category that you define. You can manage your categories within Galley, creating what they call virtual categories. So let's speak in terms of e-commerce. You have a category hot deals, hot offers in your e-commerce system, but obviously you don't want to manually add like each and every product of your catalog to that category that applies. That would be stupid, right? So you can set up rules within Galley just to do that. That's pretty cool. And then you can also manually rank certain products if you want to. So how does it work? As I said, we have Galley on the right-hand side. It uses MariaDB or PostgreSDB to store the configuration data, and then Elastic or OpenSearch for the documents that should be searchable. And then manages how the index get created, configured, whatever, to match exactly the behavior that you want to configure. And then on the very left, you got basically any kind of application. Could be an e-commerce one like Cilios, could be Shopware, could be Magento. So there are connectors for these out of the box, or you have your own application. And there are two ways to communicate with Galley. So one thing, we are pushing the data in via REST API. That's why we have the API platform. If we want to query the data, there's a GraphQL interface for that. Why GraphQL? Well, a search can be quite complex regarding different filters, regarding aggregations, regarding Boolean logic. You could totally have come up with an own language for that, or you just use something that is available out there and fully customizable like GraphQL. And no worries if you implement this yourself. In their wiki, they have like all the GraphQL queries there. You just basically like copy and paste it, and it just works out of the box. So I'm totally not a GraphQL expert. It just worked fine for me. And the cool thing is having Galley separated and as a microservice means you can plug this in any kind of application. Maybe you have a mobile application that you want to behave exactly the same as your web application regarding search. It doesn't really matter. You just call the exact same APIs with the exact same parameters, and you will get the exact same results. That's the cool part. That's actually microservices done right. Yeah, thanks, Sebastian. Thank you. Now, If you don't trust my word that this is an awesome solution, you may trust the word of my good friend Jay-Z, who, that's the first time this gets a laugh, so I'm very happy that I'm be with you. Who, after installing Galley, sang his favorite song, I've Got 99 Problems, but search ain't one. How do we install Galley? Easy. 4 simple steps. First, you git clone or you fork and clone the repo. Once that is done, you run make up. Now, what this will do is download a bunch of Docker files doing a lot of magic, a bunch of NPM installs, right? Downloading half the internet, and if you wait like 2 or 3 days, it's spun up and it will be working. Okay, it'll take 10 minutes roughly. Once it's up and running, we do need to load the fixtures, some basic data that we need to provide some default configurations that you can build upon. And then obviously we need to create a user. And once that is done, we can finally log in. Yay! Now the cool thing about this Galley frontend is it's using the exact same REST API as you can use in your application. So it's a headless, I think, React solution that doesn't do any magic fuss. So everything you can do in the Galley app in UI, you can do your own by just calling the right APIs. And that's pretty cool, pretty neat. Once you log in, this is what you see. You'll see all the catalogs that are in place with all the locales that are in the system. And you can do a bunch of stuff. I don't go in each and every part of this. I just show you the highlights. A pretty cool thing is the analyze feature right here. If you use that, you can actually test the search and figure out how it works and why it works. So you pick the catalog. I'll cover that later, what that is, the request type, should it be a search or should it be browsing the catalog sites, define the search terms, click explain, you get all the results that are affected by the search, and plus what you do, you see the scoring of Elasticsearch to figure out like how it works, plus you get the whole request that Galley would send to Elasticsearch, the server, just to see like what's the exact query, how can I optimize it and stuff like that. Well, that's pretty neat. For each of the categories, I can configure my facets. Facets are basically the filters, the attributes that are in place. I can decide should they be available every time based on certain rules, based on certain products that have certain attributes, how many products in the search results need to have the gemstone add-on attribute so that the filter is available, right? So you don't want to blow up your filter bar with filters that would just result in like one product or whatnot. So you can do a lot in that regard. You can define it globally by configuring the default category, or if you want to go a bit crazy, just pick any category and configure it as you want to. I touched this briefly, the thesaurus. You can define synonyms and expansions that Galley will then use when you query it. Synonyms basically mean whenever someone would search for robe, it would also take into account documents that have the dress as a search term and vice versa. So depending on how many synonyms you enter here, it will all be taken into account when you search for one of them. Expansions, on the other hand side, is when a customer is searching for trousers, they will also then search for pants and shorts. But if they search for pants and shorts, trousers would not be taken into account. So that's the difference. Depending on your use case, you might want to use one or the other. And then who of you here is a backend developer? Yeah. Who of you loves the smell of a good API? Yeah, okay, cool. That's what we have here, right? And that's basically what API platform is doing. So if you hop on the /docs URL, you see all the different endpoints that Galley offers, and you can use actually this Swagger UI to interact with Galley and just see how it reacts. You see all the parameters that you need to pass, you see the responses and whatnot. And same for GraphQL. There's a separate UI based on the /GraphQL endpoint where you can get your GraphQL query done. On top over here, you would formulate the query. In this case, we get the autocomplete documents. We have our query variables here, the catalogs, the request type, page size, the search term, and whatnot. And then on the very left, we got the search results. So how do I access the Galley API? Well, first of all, you can go old school, the curl way. Totally easy, hit the right endpoint, set the accept header, set the content type, and just post stuff, and you're good to go. Or if you want to integrate this in your PHP application, there is actually a client SDK for the REST API generated based out of the Swagger configuration that is available for the specific Galley version. That way, you have some relatively nice objects that you can interact with, and you don't really care about the API endpoints. So you need to define your access token, you need to define a base URL, then create a Galley configuration object, set the authorization token, set the bearer authorization, set the host, and then you create a Guzzle HTTP client because that's what they are using under the hood. You, for example, use the source field API, pass the client, pass the configuration, and then a bunch of methods are exposed, like in this case, get source field collection. You get all the source fields from the system, and then you can do whatever you want with it. So that's kind of like a nicer way than doing like the HTTP requests, which we'll do in a second. So when I reached this stage of the slides, I figured out it would actually be good to have like a really interesting demo for you to see how it works and how it feels to work with Galley. Now, I could have used the Cilius plugin that we developed for the Galley folks, but I realized that requires a lot of domain knowledge regarding Cilius e-commerce and whatnot, so that probably a bit too much for this talk. And then it hit me. It hit me. Because I have like let's call it a side project for a bunch of years now, where I wanted to add search for a really long time, but I never found the time. And oops, that's our company blog. So about 3 years ago, we migrated our blog to, no, 4 years ago, we migrated our blog to Docusaurus, single page application generator, whatnot. But the thing that we are lacking is good search. I mean, they have some in-browser, local search, history, whatever thing, but that was like, come on, I mean, I want cool search. So I went through the journey to set up everything. So if I have time, probably during Christmas time, I have all the bits and pieces together to finally put the search online. And no worries, this is like a React front end. We are not doing React. It's just like the server side, the good stuff. Before we dive deep into how things work, let's have a look at the data model, because I realized it just makes sense to have a look at this from a very high level so that we are on the same page. So it all starts with a catalog. Think of a catalog as a website, I would say, right? Our blog is a catalog. If you have an online shop with like multiple storefronts, each storefront would be an own catalog. Each catalog needs a localized catalog. You need a specific language that you want to expose. Luckily, in our case, it's just English. But if you would have like a blog in multiple languages, then you would have like multiple localized catalogs that you need to address then during the indexing part. On the right-hand side, we have the metadata, the objects Galley is aware of. So by default, and I said it previously, it's coming from the e-commerce space, so Galley knows about products, categories, price, stock, images, all that stuff, CMS pages, but it's extensible. And you can extend it just by doing a bunch of API calls, so you don't need to write code, which is pretty amazing, as you will see in a minute. And then what combines both the metadata on the right and the localized catalog is the Elasticsearch index. So that's the connector of both parts. Now, metadata is nice. Let's say I create a metadata object called blog post, but we need like attributes, right? Source fields, as they call it. I need to define how I structure my objects, how I want to use these source fields then to create, for example, the filtering, the layered navigation, how I want to use the source fields in probably boosting certain blog posts because we're laughing. That's what we do, research people. We boost stuff just to influence you in certain things. Now, a source field can have a field label, obviously then localized in all the different languages that you want to support. And if a source field is of type select, you also need to define all the different options that should be available. So you can't push anything in there that Galley isn't aware of. So having said that, let's have a look at the API endpoints and calls that we need to make to prepare everything and push data into Galley. First, I mean, we've seen that already. We need an authentication token, so we need to log in. We just post email and password to the authentication token endpoint, and we get a nice, lovely token back that we can then use as a bearer token and send it for all the subsequent requests. So let's first create a catalog. Super simple. There's a /catalogs endpoint. All you need to post is a code and a name. The code obviously is used internally as a kind of reference, and the name is only visible in the admin UI. So if you're browsing your shop, or in our case, the blog, this will never appear somewhere unless you explicitly want that. And as a response, we get this lovely thing back. We are most importantly interested in this ID here, which we'll then use in subsequent requests to finalize everything. So now we have the catalog. Next thing is we create the localized catalog. As you probably could have guessed, there is a localized catalogs endpoint. We give it a name, like in this case, bitExpert blog English. Give it a code. Code has to be unique. We need to pass a locale so that Galley will then figure out, like, this is the specific locale and can optimize a few things under the hood. As I said, Galley is coming from an e-commerce point of view, so you have to provide a currency, which for a blog obviously is kind of stupid, but anyway, that's how things work currently. The Galley folks are very active in, let's say, removing the e-commerce focus from a lot of parts of Galley so that you could, for example, plug this very easily into a content management system or whatnot. I think Ibexio is currently on their list to write a plugin for. Is default false? Yeah. If you don't have like just one catalog, you can define which one should be the default one. Makes a few things easier. And then in catalog, we refer to the catalog's 10 IRI so that the localized catalog and the catalog are correctly connected. And then again, that's the response. We get the ID back that we need for further requests, and the rest of the part we can ignore. Now, let's create a metadata object. Probably guessed it, there is a /metadata endpoint, and that's all you need to do to send to Galley to create a new metadata entity. It's just give it a name called entity, and then just pass whatever you want. End of this talk. Just kidding. Again, we get some metadata information back. Again, we need to take care or track the ID part as we need it later on when creating the source fields, because we need to attach source fields to a metadata object. And that's what we are doing now. There are a bunch of types that you can use from Galley for these source fields. There is reference, which is mostly used for like ID fields. And then we have like integer float, text, select. I just covered that. You need to provide some options if you want to have like a specific select field. Date is also self-explanatory, I guess. And then I call them e-commerce specific types, things like an image, a category, a price, a stock information. So just ignore them if you don't need them. That's the key message here. Very important, if you create such a metadata object, there is one source field that you need to add, and this is called ID. And ID needs to be of type reference. If you don't do that, it just doesn't work, and it won't tell you that it doesn't work. If you want to know how and why I figured this out, come to me after the talk. If you want to know how many time I wasted figuring out how to fix this shit, come to me after the talk. So let's take, for example, the title source field. Again, we give it a code. The code needs to be unique. We give it a default label because we don't care about translations. We set it to type text to make it really easy. And then we pass a few flags. Is searchable? I guess the name implies what it does. Is sortable? I guess the name implies what it does. We can define the search weight. Like in this case, I set it to 10 because I felt the title is super important for my blog post. So this should definitely be used higher in figuring out or computing the correct search results, right? If a search term is in the title, then it's most likely that the user wants to see it. We can make sure that the spell checker is working to fix a few spell checking issues. And then we attach it to the right metadata object. Been there, done that. Again, we get the ID back. We don't need it in subsequent requests, but maybe you want to do something with it. I felt it stupid to go over like all the different source fields I added, so I just compiled here what I did. As I just mentioned, the ID field, it needs to be called ID, it needs to be of type reference, and very important, it needs to be flagged as a system field. Again, I made a mistake. It took me a few hours to figure out why, but I finally found the issue. And then we have a title, we have content for the blog post content, obviously the author and tags. Now, all of these have a type of string, but you can easily pass an array of strings, which obviously for the tags makes the most sense, maybe also for the author. For content and title, I will just still just pass one value. You still need to pass it as an array just to make Galley aware of the information and then correctly process it. Once we have added all these fields, if we hop in the settings down here and we choose our blog post entity, we get a list of all these things here, of all the different attributes we created, and we can like change the filter type, change if it should be searchable or not, sortable or not, used in the rule engine or whatnot. There's only one thing to consider. If you make any change in this section of Galley, you need to re-index everything, because that basically influences how the Elasticsearch indexes are created, which magic Galley does in the backend to make all that happen. For anything else that you configure over here, you don't need to do the full re-index. It's just like on this very page. And you don't see it here, but the ID field, since it's a system field, you can't change. So whatever you created by the API, that's set in stone. Yeah, having said that, we can move on, because there is more. We talked about search weights before. In the configuration section, again, we can pick our blog post entities, see all the attributes that we have that are marked searchable, and then we can define our search weight here, so we can very dynamically change how things work in the background. Cool. We are slowly moving to the important parts. The index, as I said, it combines the metadata and the localized catalog, and index is also the term that Elasticsearch is using. If you're not familiar, like index would be a kind of like database table where all the stuff is put in there. Create an index is very easy. There is a /indices endpoint. We need to define the entity type, in this case blog post, and the localized catalog that we created before, and that's the response that we get. And this is basically the name that is used as an index within Elasticsearch. If you look closely, you will figure out this is a date. And that means every time you do a full reindex, this date and time changes, which totally makes sense because when you do a full reindex, you still want your users to be able to use the search, right? So users would then use the old index until you kind of like rotate the index and then get rid of the old one. So reindexing will not affect any kind of search experience of your users. Then let's start indexing some blog posts. There is a index documents endpoint. We need to define the index name and then a bunch of documents. So as you can see, that's an array, so I can push in any amount of documents that you like. Ideally, if you do a full reindex, you want to like push in documents in batch sizes. You need to implement some logic there to push like, I don't know, 50, 100, or maybe 200 items at the same time. If you feel you can like push everything and just see how it works. It shouldn't really affect things, I guess, but it should be a bit faster if you use the bulk insert. Another important thing to realize, this thing here is not a JSON object, that's a bloody string. And that's for a reason, because API platform will look at your request and trying to like parse it or map it, and since you don't know, or API platform and Galley don't know how your documents look like, you can't use real objects here. So you need to pass this as a string. What is even more annoying is that for a JSON object, you need like the double quotes. That means before each and every double quote within the string, you need to escape it, which is really annoying if you type this by hand. But if you do it programmatically, it should be fine. Just a few things to consider. And then again, we get this nice and lovely response back. Everything's fine. And now, well, technically it's not really fine because we are like in a floating state. So the stuff is kind of like inelastic, but not really. We need to do two things to finish the full reindex. First of all, we need to refresh our index that we've created. So for the name here, just apply the name that we saw here. So this will do some magic in the background. And then once that is done, you need to install the index, and this will make Galley aware of the new index name and like rotate it in the local database. So whenever now you hit the search queries, they will go to the newly installed index, and the other one, the old one, gets ignored. That is what you need to do. And if we hop in Elastic, we can see this index exists, and we have our mappings and all the documents and stuff in place. So everything is working fine. Cool. Now that we have everything in Elastic, or in Galley, what's left? Well, obviously, right? I mean, that's the whole story of this talk. We need to retrieve the blog post. We need to search for it. As I said in the beginning, there's a nice, lovely GraphQL UI that you can use. This is, as I also said, a one-to-one copy of what's in the Galley documentation. So I didn't make this up myself. You define your query variables down here. Say you want to search for a blog post. This is the localized catalog with the ID 19, the page size, and then the search term. You can also define over here some more filters if you want to really go crazy. Only show the blog post of author Stephan with the tags, whatever, traffic and Dresden and whatever. And then on the right-hand side, you get all the responses, the collection itself, the pagination info, the sorting info, so that in your UI you can render things as you want. And then last not least, you also get all the aggregations that you can use then, or that your users can use to filter down some valid search results. Since I'm the only author in this example, it's just me that exists. You can get different types of filters back that you then can use in your UI to render stuff. There are a bunch of like generic filters like checkbox or Boolean filters, and again, some e-commerce specific ones like a slider or a category. So Galley, for example, is using the slider for the price selector, right, where you want to select between like minimum and maximum price for your products. And that's almost all that I have prepared for you. Now, the thing is, it's okay, right? Not okay? Oh, okay. No. But I mean, this feels so 2015, right? I mean, it's like 2024, and we have this AI stuff, and like, yeah, exactly. Like, what's the deal? Funny side story. I think we have that time. My original plan was to let AI generate this image and have the current date here. So I 5 minutes, okay. So I tried this a couple of times, completely did not work. So my new approach was, I found this image on the interwebs, and I thought maybe it's easier if I can upload this and so may I change this to the date I want to. Spoiler, didn't work. So that's what I decided to change the storyline to make sure that we are in 2015. I'm a professional. Good. Yeah, AI is everywhere, and obviously also in search. Elastic and OpenSearch support a thing that is called vector search. Who of you has heard the term vector search before? Okay, cool. Then probably you can define it a lot better than I can. Layman speak. You have any kind of document on the very left-hand side. Can be an image, can be a text file, can be an audio file, can be anything. And some magic is turning that into a vector. And also your search query is turned into a vector. And the theory is that data that is similar has a similar vector. And that's what they use then with a nearest neighbor algorithm to figure out and filter out things that seem to be similar. So if I have an image that shows like a red scarf, and I search for a red scarf, technically these vectors are quite similar and should be returned. So that's roughly my understanding of this dark black magic thing. You can use it for a ton of ideas. You can use it for semantic search, obviously. You can use it for search recommendations, question answering, for searching unstructured data. As I said, images, audio, maybe sensor data. Maybe you have some IoT sensors anywhere, and they push the data in here, and you can then search for anomalies and whatnot. You can also use it to re-rank the search results based on certain criteria. So that's a cool thing. And it's part of Galley itself. And it's very configurable. That's the pretty cool part. So in your Galley configuration, there is this Galley vector search section. You can technically define any LML model that you want to use for this vector search. That means if you have a very specific use case, you want to train your own model for that, you can totally do that and then just use it here. Let's say I have a blog about a very specific topic, and people have some very specific search terms, and I want to make sure that the relations between these terms are exactly how I want it to be. I can build my own model and then just use it here, and that probably then has some better search results than these standard models. Again, you can configure like k-values, minimum score, spell check, and exact merge, exact matches, and stuff like that. Once you have configured that, within Galley, there is a section over here called vector search. And again, you see you can choose all the entities you want, and that will list all the source fields. And then you can enable the different source fields as, or mark the different source fields as vectorizable. You can define the position, and you can define a prompt that is used to construct a block of text that will then be used by the LLM to create the vector search information. So, basic example, for our blog post that we want to index, this is the text that Galley would generate. The title of this blog post is using basic auth and traffic conditionally, and the blog post content is can be conditionally blah, 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 blah. And tags associated with the blog post are traffic and DevOps. And then, as I said, Galley will magically create a vector out of it, do the stuff in Elastic, and everything is good to go. And then, again, you can use GraphQL to search for the information. There is a get vector search documents GraphQL query. You can define a bunch of parameters. And what I realized at this point, it doesn't seem to support custom entities or custom metadata objects so far. So I had to use the standard product stuff, that the product information just for your entertaining pleasure. But I hope at some point they will fix that. So it works fine for products, works fine for catalogs, but not for your own entities, at least at this point. Or I missed something in the documentation. Cool. And then we're close to the end. So if you want to know more about Galley, this is the main and most important GitHub page. You can find the code there. You can find the wiki with a ton of information. As I said, there is a Sylius connector for Galley. There's a shopware connector out of the box. Just install that, and all the magic is done for you. If you have an own application, you need to do that yourself. Meetgalley.com is their website where you can find some more information. And now it's time for your questions.
Thank you, Sebastian. Oh, Stephan.
Oh, that was a good one. I didn't see that coming.
So, where are the mics? I don't see the people with the mics in their hand. So you can think about a question in the meantime. Oh, do you have a question, maybe? So, anyone?
Thank you for the talk. As a web developer, I'm mostly with CMS, Typo 3, doing stuff with that. Today, what would you say, what gives me Galley for over solutions like Solar or using an Elastic Stack directly?
True. How familiar are you with Elasticsearch, Solar, and stuff?
Not so much.
Exactly, and that's why I want to use Galley. That was the best answer. So of course you could directly talk to Elasticsearch yourself, and we've done that a lot for customers in our e-commerce projects. And it's really like we fix an issue for the customer, and then 6 months later he comes again and says, okay, we should change this and that and that. I'm looking at the queries and I think, I have no idea what I've done. I have no understanding of Elasticsearch, so I need to re-dig into everything and figure out, like reverse engineer what my thoughts were back then, what I configured, and then reapply the same logic. So if you don't want to care about how things work in Elastic, you just want like a search engine, this is the way to go. Does that answer your question? Okay, I take that as yes.
So do we have another question?
Yes, over here.
By the lights, so it's a little bit hidden.
That's why every team, right?
Yeah.
4 eyes, 8 eyes.
Hi. So I actually have 2 questions. So
Yes.
did I understand correctly?
One is free, and the other one will cost
How much
you
is it?
a beer.
Then I have to. I put them in one question. So
No, just
it's really complicated. No, the first one is, did I understand correctly? So they have to trigger the indexation via REST?
Yes.
There's no way for it to happen automatically. I don't know, every like you could configure in Elasticsearch or Solr or something that index gets updated if you push that many entries or every 5 minutes or...
Well, I mean, technically you could do that. It really depends like how you implement it then on your application side. So for example, for Cilius and for Shopware, whenever you create a new product in those systems, it will automatically then get pushed into Galley. It's just like the full reindex that you need to manually do.
Okay, I see. The other question is there a way, so all the administration configuration lives on the relational database, correct?
Yes.
Is there a way to replace it with, I don't know, some static files? Because for some use cases, you may not want people, you know, fiddle around with the administration. So we just want something static, which
Oh, I see.
So you could hook into API platform, but out of the box, is there a way?
Well, I mean, the question is like twofold, I guess. So you definitely need a relational database to store the data. I guess you can't get rid of that. If you don't want anyone to need to configure Galley, then you probably can build something around it, like I don't know, like a jumble parser, reading that from a jumble, like an XML parser, reading the values and then like pushing that to Galley by the REST APIs.
Okay, thanks.
So one last question, I guess.
Ja, einer geht noch.
Short question.
Yes.
You showed us you have to give in the login.
Yep.
And when you are using the searching, is there a way without the login for JavaScript in this?
Yeah, so you just need to be authenticated to push data in. For all the searching, I think you don't need to be authenticated. Now I'm just questioning what I'm just thinking. You may need to be authenticated. Yeah, probably you need to, otherwise. I don't know.
Because you can use it in JavaScript directly in the browsers, maybe.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it's just like a bloody damn search, so why would you need to be authenticated? Let me just.
I
think you don't need to be authenticated because when I opened the GraphQL UI, I haven't ever authenticated myself. So I would assume you don't need to be authenticated. If I'm wrong, blame me. It's fine.
So thank you, Stephan, for your talk. And as we are nearing the end, there's just one talk left. The catering will be gone if you leave for the last talk. So if you want to grab a cup of coffee, that's the last break you can do this. After that, it's gone. So be fast if you need some caffeine.